behind us, this is the main entrance to the Linton-on-Ouse, RAF Linton-on-Ouse. We thought we'd come down just to scope out, see some information, and we noticed it was actually open. So you follow the public path down there and you get to the main reception where there were two servicemen stationed there. We were just basically informing them that we're here for community outreach, what information have they got that they can give to the public, and surprisingly it was exactly the same as the residents, like not much information. They weren't sure what was going on. The only thing that they were sort of given the power to do is an email here to the MOD. So hopefully going to get some information there, find out whatever we can, and then the information that we can, we'll make it as transparent as possible, inform local people, accessible, because that's the main thing.
I mean, the interesting thing about those lads is they were very helpful, but they said that we probably had more information about it than they did.
Yeah, so it's an example of mushroom management. Feed them rubbish and keep them in the dark.
Yeah, because then it can't even get leaked out if something's
because if there's no if the information's been kept sort of within certain circles, it's very difficult for them, the public, who are entitled to this information. It's a big change, independently of the politics of what you feel or believe. It's a big change that's happening to a place that the local people who live here have had very little information for, and it's not right. There is hangars to the left, to the right. I believe that is the bunking area where people will be staying. It's
down that way is the main entrance.
Yeah, that's the main entrance over there. From best we can gather, the entire thing is completely abandoned, but it's a massive site. Further in sort of that direction is the what's it called? Where airport, the taxi area.
The runway.
That's the one. The runway. The village is half abandoned. It's nowhere near any major commuting centres, so nobody's going to drive here by accident and find it.
I mean, we've been here for what, about an hour maybe? 40 minutes. We've seen 2 cars drive through.
Yeah, about 2 cars, literally. There's a parish council meeting on the 19th of March which we're going to attend, and also hopefully contact the local MP, because interestingly on the 15th of March the local MP for the area, I forget his name.
Kevin Holland. Owner of Hunters the estate agent. Although maybe I should retract that.
Anyway, on the 15th of March he was for this proposal. He was saying that local residents haven't heard their voice, but we need to process these people in a nice way. And then recently, a couple of days after the outpouring of local damnation, he's retracted his statement. Now he's working with Prabhu Patel about how it's going to be enforced. Anyway, the entire process is a sham.
There was also the fact that there's it's interesting that they've chosen this facility in particular, because for what we've heard, the military base in York is shutting as well.
Which could have easily been used as a similar thing.
But that's obviously...
It's around young people, it's around universities, people who come out to strike against such measures sometimes. There's a lot more to do, a lot more to find out. We need to do the due process and inform local people about what's happening in their area, because the government certainly isn't. Don't vote Tory. Pick up some of the things that we were saying earlier. In front of us here are 2 local newspapers. The one to my left, where George is holding, is from April the 15th. This newspaper here is April the 20th. That is the Press, and this is Gazette and Herald, local newspapers. So, on the 15th, 5 days ago, Mr. Hollenrake said that, "I appreciate my constituents may have a number of questions about this site, but it is important to note that these claims must be processed somewhere in a humane and managed manner." To me, that indicates support. Now, you look here, 5 days later, after this has been announced, and that his local constituents and people have sort of raised very valid problems with this. Now, today, Wednesday the 20th, the MP for North Yorkshire, the village, has asked for a meeting with the Home Secretary. Prabhu Patel announced last week that this RAF base in Linton-on-Ouse will be used for a deportation centre. Now, anyway, Kevin Hollick said, "There are understandable concerns from local people that this is not the appropriate place for such a reception centre." He urged the Home Secretary to meet him to discuss the issue. "Absolutely," she said, as she pledged to meet him. So there's been a change in position over the past 5 days. So Hollenrake thought, oh, this is maybe a good opportunity for me to sort of shine in the Conservative Party, highlight my constituency and my loyalty to the regime. And then 5 days later, after his constituents rightly have had no information, have made himself known, it's very interesting how he switches and changes his tune. Something to consider.
Just to give some additional background on the proposal, the idea is to house 1,500 refugees in the village. This is up from the previously quoted number of 500. Now they've more than tripled it, which, you know, naturally the residents aren't too sure if even 1500 is going to stick, or if there's going to be plans, especially with the controversy about sending people to Rwanda. Now, initially we weren't sure if they were planning on sending people directly from the RAF base, because obviously it has the facilities, but apparently these refugees will be the ones lucky enough not to be sent halfway across the world. As to the standards of the refugee accommodation, it's pretty pitiful. They're supposedly going to be housed in temporary shipping containers. How temporary this is remains to be seen. There isn't actually the capacity at the RAF barracks to house 1,500 people. At peak operation, the village in total numbered 12,000 people, so this would bring that well above that to 2,000. And even at peak operation, most of the people working at the base didn't live on the base, they didn't live on site. There's an entire street now that lays abandoned that's about to be sold off, as per usual, profit put before people, that housed the majority of the people who would work there, you know, the permanent technicians and all of that kind of thing. So when villagers point out that there isn't really the infrastructure, they're not incorrect. I mean, there's definitely a sense when we were wandering around that there are some people there who are probably a little bit right-wing, a little bit reactionary, but there are also people who are clearly, at least of liberal sentiment, who really want to welcome the refugees, but I just worried that this is going to look like some sort of concentration camp next door. It's not a great look. It should also be said on the shipping container front that a lot of the residents we spoke to are simply unaware of this. They haven't attended the only time that this has been announced. They haven't read, I guess, this paper in particular. A lot of people tend to be quite switched off from the national papers, especially in the area, mostly local papers, which the reporting hasn't been quite as in detailed, shall we say, as The Guardian, which, you know, it's not good, because this kind of thing, it decries a lack of accountability, that's for certain. So just to add something on Kevin Holland-Rake's flip-flopping, he actually has a bit of a history of this, especially around elections, which, surprise, surprise, there's one coming up. So historically, there's a lot of activism against, a lot of skepticism about, a lot of worry and concern regarding fracking and the various fracking pumps that were going to be opened or still planning to be opened around the Yorkshire area, particularly in his constituency. Now, interestingly, whenever it's election time, he always goes, yes, 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 I say that I support fracking, but I only want it where it's safe. And he tries to talk up the fact that he's not going to just let it happen anywhere. However, unfortunately, this article is not free. However, when push comes to shove after the election, this all disappears, the work on the sites remains, and, you know, nothing really changes. It's an empty promise, because he knows that most people are going to hear what he has to say at election time when they're switched on to what's going on, and then they're going to switch off at the end of the election and not notice that nothing's actually being done.
We're in Linton-on-Ouse, where the refugee camp is going to be made. All along this street, these are all houses that are going to become sort of damned to be destroyed. Now, there is a legal process that has to be done to do this. And for example, as you can see here, this is a piece of paper. But if you look there, that is a management target assessment report, which legally must be done so people can see it, to show that the proper safeguarding and done the environmental work and stuff like this. But so there's been a bit of a conspiracy, you see, because as that one is hard to read, so is this one. It's been taped opposite so you can't see. Now, I think this is done intentionally by someone perhaps higher up who wants to make it as hard as possible for any public scrutiny to happen about this development.